Hi, this is James, and I'm here with the Oracle Outlook for the week starting February the 13th, 2017. This week, I'm going to be doing a tarot card reading, and the deck that's going to be assisting me for this week's reading is the Love Tarot. It is by Sarah Bartlett and Nancy Tolford. And the reason for the deck selection is twofold. Number one, we have Valentine's Day occurring in this week. And then the second is I'm feeling, this is just me personally, I'm feeling like we could use a lot of love in the world right now. So that is the reason for the deck selection. This deck is very interesting. It's a little bit of a departure. If you're familiar with tarot, then you know tarot decks can usually consist of 78 cards. And that is 22 for the major arcana and 56 cards for the minor arcana. Well, this deck is only majors, which means this is only 22 card deck. And that was another reason why I chose it. The major arcana cards for me, when they show up in a reading, carry more weight, and their emphasis is on important issues or events that are designed to help us with our spiritual growth and development. At least that is my take on the major arcana cards. And so with that in mind, through the lens of needing more love in the world, it just seems to me there are a lot of things going on here in the United States where I live and abroad in other parts of the world where it seems like there is a seeming appearance of division. And so the only way we can heal the division is through love. At least that's my opinion. So I'm using this deck with the lens of like, how can we bring more love into our lives, into our communities, into the world this week? So that is my specific intention. You know, so if you're watching this video and the idea of love for you may be a committed relationship that you're in, then you can listen to the cards, or at least the messages of the cards, through that lens. You know, if you are not involved and you're looking for love, you could listen to the messages through that lens. If you are not involved and you are not looking for love, then you could listen to the messages of the cards through the lens of the relationship that you are having with yourself. Because I'm a big believer in this saying, no matter where you go in life, you always take you with you. So even if you're in a committed relationship or you're looking for love, you are still having a relationship with yourself. So, you know, you get to choose how you're going to receive the messages and in what area you want to connect the dots or make them relatable. So having said that, I have the deck of cards right here on the table in front of me. So I'm going to be shuffling the cards. And again, I'm asking the question, what do we need to know about the week ahead? Because that's my basic intention every week that I do these weekly readings. But also I'm asking with the undercurrent of how can we be more loving, either to ourselves, to those around us, or to the world at large this week. So I'm shuffling overhand this week because there's only 22 cards. Feeling that's good, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut the deck. Now fan the cards out. And this week I'm picking 3 cards. Just the ones that call out to me in the fan. So I have my 3 cards selected. Gathering up the remainder of the cards. Putting them aside. So I have the 3 cards, and I'm going to read the cards from left to right. So the first card for the week is the Hangman. So the Hangman is a wonderful card. It can represent a change in perspective. The reason why I say this is because the Hangman is hanging upside down, which allows him to see his world in a different way than he would if he was on his feet and standing right side up. So this week we're being asked to look at love in whatever way we want to relate to it or connect it to our real world experiences this week through the idea of how can we be looking at things differently. So now I'm going to touch on certain aspects. The Hangman can come up when it looks like a situation is not progressing, not moving forward, because this card can represent something being put on hold, something being suspended, something experiencing a setback, something like that. So for someone watching this video, that could very well be the case. It could also be, too, like the idea here about experiencing a reversal. And so that goes back to my idea about the seeming appearance of division in the world. And going with this, the Hanged Man can come up when we're being asked to embrace our differences, embrace what's unique about us. And so that could be the very thing that's causing division. So if we're looking at each other from a lens of difference, then the change in perspective or the change in outlook could be, how can we be willing to embrace someone else's difference, right? Instead of us looking at the divide or creating a divide or division about like us versus them or me versus you, that kind of energy. How can we be willing to embrace someone else's difference? So I'm seeing that with the Hangman. I'm asking what else do I need to say about this. Yeah, so it's just about being willing to be who you are. Again, this is about embracing what's different and what's unique about you, but also being willing to allow someone else to be different and unique from you, because we're all unique expressions in this world. So it's about how can we work on embracing that. The other thing here with the Hangman, and this may be a particular message for someone watching this video, is that sometimes the Hangman can come up when we are working on accepting things the way they are. So there may be someone who's experiencing a particular relationship, and the idea here is you're being asked to just be willing to accept the other person or persons as they are. Because this card is about accepting what is. And with that, it carries a spiritual principle of surrender. And surrender is not a defeatist kind of position to take. It's more about being willing to let go and let God or spirit or the divine, because this card carries with it that expression about letting go and letting God. So the other thing about it is, who do we need to forgive this week? The Hangman can come up when we are being asked to consider being willing to forgive, because the Hangman is all about being willing to do something. So this card could be about who do we need to forgive, and that could include ourselves. And will we be willing to consider taking that step this week? Forgiveness is really not about the other person or persons, and it's not saying I'm giving you a pass or I'm condoning your behavior or anything like that. Forgiveness is really a gift you give yourself, because it frees you. He's hanging upside down, so really he's in suspension, but it frees you from all the emotions that are connected to that unforgiveness. You know, so you're kind of tying yourself up. He's got his hands behind his back. You're kind of tying yourself up when you are in a position of unforgiveness. So again, summing up, this card is about being willing to look at other people's differences as you are willing to embrace your own. And also, who do you need to forgive, and would you be willing to do that? And if it's yourself, then would you be willing to forgive yourself this week? You know, and the other thing about this card is about surrendering and letting go, accepting things the way they are, accepting what is, and being willing to release any attachments or any expectations about wanting the person or the situation to have been different. So I'm seeing that with the Hangman. Moving to the middle card. Ooh, okay, we have the Moon. Okay, so this is very interesting. I usually don't connect astrology with these cards, but the Moon is Pisces. And so we may actually be moving into the sign of Pisces this week. I believe we are. And with that, then the Hanged Man is a card that represents Neptune, which is the ruling planet of Pisces. So we have a lot of Piscean, Neptunian energy going on here. So with that, the Moon is a card that comes up when we are being asked to confront the things that we fear. You know, and also too in our relationships, this is more important than what I just said. In our relationships, we may be going about experiences and relationships this week where we are going to feel a sense of being triggered. This card for me is about emotional sensitivity, and when the Moon shows up, it represents heightened emotional sensitivity. And with that, we could be in situations, environments, interactions with people where we feel triggered, where somebody kind of pushes your buttons kind of thing. So this may be the week where we're going to get our buttons pushed. And with the Hangman coming before that, how can you be willing to have a different reaction and different response? You know, chances are if your buttons get pushed, it's because it's a typical reaction. a knee-jerk reaction. And then the hangman coming before that is, would you be willing to have a different response this week, a different reaction? Because when you approach the situation or you react and respond to a situation differently, it changes, right? So this week we're being given a heads up and being asked to be mindful of the things and the people that trigger us, and then will we be willing to react and respond differently than what we have been? Because it's making me feel that expression about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity, right? So it could be like, okay, so instead of making yourself crazy, and that's another aspect of the moon, because the moon represents Luna, right? And that's a root word in lunacy. And lunacy is where things just make you crazy because they don't make sense, right? So it's about like, how can we have a different reaction instead of making ourselves crazy, doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different response. So for someone watching this video this week, sometimes for me, the moon card can represent mothers and issues with mothers. So someone watching this week, since we talked about relationships, someone watching this video this week may be having a particular experience or a direct experience with their mother, or working through unforgiveness that's attached to something mother did in the past. So this is your week to consider, why are you still holding on to that? Would you be willing to this week release it and let it go? So I'm seeing that with the moon. And both with the moon card and the hangman, I'm being said to say this, is that somebody is needing to take a close look at their story. We all have stories, and in this particular story, someone may be taking on the role of wanting to play the victim. And so if that resonates with you, ask yourself the difficult question is, what do you get out of hanging on to that story and continuing to play that part? That may be the thing you need to free yourself up from. So I'm seeing that with the moon and the hangman. Now moving to the card for the end of the week, I knew this card was going to show up. Okay, so here we have the devil card. The devil card is a very loaded card. There's a lot to say about this card. So the first thing here is that the devil is all about conditioning and programming, right? So it makes sense that it comes after the moon, and we talked about confronting our fears, because the devil can represent fears. And with the fears, it's about, that expression with fear being an acronym, and it's about false evidence appearing real. That's the devil, right? So we're taking a look at the conditioning and programming that we have around love. So for someone, it could be about your committed relationship. It could be someone watching this video is about relationships generally speaking. What's your fears about that? What have you been conditioned to believe about relationships, about how you operate in relationships? Because the devil card is getting you to take a look at your role. And again, this is going back to the person who may be experiencing the whole story about being the victim. When we do that, the devil card says we do that from a place of not being willing to accept responsibility for our part in the situation. And I know this from firsthand experience. The devil is one of my own personal cards, and it's been the card that has taught me the most about the way I move and operate through life. So this card comes up when we are hanging on to a story that we believe to be true, but it's really an error, because this card is about false beliefs and error consciousness. It's really an error, and we do it because there's a payoff we get out of not taking responsibility for our contribution in a situation. Now, the other thing about the devil card for me, this card is getting us to look at the things that we choose to commit to this week. And that could be people, and that could be situations, things of that nature. But we're being asked to look at the things that we are committing to. Because the devil card can represent, in the challenging sense, is that we can commit to things or people from a sense of making their needs more important than ours. Sometimes the devil card can represent codependency, and it can also represent like being in relationships or being in situations in which you operate from a place of allowing yourself to be a slave to the needs and the demands of other people. And again, then the hard question is, if you're going to change that, going back to the hangman about doing a reversal, kind of like flipping the script. If you do that, then the first thing you have to do is be willing to accept that you have played that part up until this moment in time. and then ask yourself the question, what did you get out of that? What was the payoff in it for you? I'm a big believer, and this is my psychology background, and the devil is all about psychological influences and psychological blocks, is that we operate from a place of self-interest. So everything we do, whether we label it as good or challenging or bad, then this card comes up to say, what did you get out of that? What was your payoff for that? Right? So we're being asked to look at that. For some of us, in terms of commitments, this card can come up about like being fearful of commitments. I'm seeing the word commitment phobe or commitment phobia. So it could be, again, like if you're wanting to embark on a new commitment, let's say you're a person who's watching this video, I was about to say this relationship, and you have just left a relationship that was maybe problematic for you, and you're embarking on looking for a new love, because I'm hearing that Jody Watley song, I'm looking for a new love, and you're embarking on a new relationship, then this card is, again, about like making sure that you've let go of all the baggage from the previous relationship so you don't bring that energy into it, you know. And also too, as you're releasing the other person, releasing the attachment and the connection to that person, be willing to ask yourself, what did I play in that? What was my contribution in that? And going forward with that. So the devil card is, again, about making long-term commitments. So somebody could be in a situation or in a relationship and it's getting serious. And so it's about like being committed for the long haul, because I'm seeing that expression in my head with the devil card. So the devil card sometimes gets a bum rap, but that's the plus side of it. Sometimes the commitments that we make are long-term and we are in it for the long haul. And so we have to be really mindful of like making sure that is something that we want to engage in, that is something we want to do. So I'm taking a step back, asking what else do I need to say about the devil card. Yeah, so in summing up with the devil card, it's about looking at our choices of commitments, what we're committing to, asking ourselves the question, are we committing to things because we want to meet the needs of other people at the expense of ourselves? You know, and if that's the case, be mindful of playing the role of being a slave to the needs of other people, you know, because we teach people how to treat us, so that's conditioning, right? We teach people how to do that. If you are working through issues about forgiveness, about the way you were treated in a previous relationship, then it's about being willing to accept the person as they are. The devil card would say they were coming from a place where they were doing the best that they could, or they just didn't know any better, because sometimes the devil card represents being in the dark, and I tend to look at that as in being unenlightened, meaning I just didn't know any better, right? Also to be willing to not to blame or scapegoat about your responsibility, your contribution to things, because the devil card is all about blaming and scapegoating, you know, the idea of like the devil made me do it, that expression. So something of that nature. And if we are engaging into a new commitment or making new commitments that seem long-term, make sure that is something that you actually want to do, because I'm seeing the expression about the devil being in the details. So it could be like maybe there's some details or something else that needs to be worked out, so you don't find yourself in a commitment, in an agreement, and then you feel trapped and stuck and you can't get out of it. So on that note, I will wrap up this week's Oracle Outlook. I am James Himm Mitchell, and I want to thank you for sharing the space here with me for this week's reading. And I look forward to sharing the same space with you again in our next video reading together. So until then, I'm hoping that you have a wonderful day, and I'm hoping that you have a tarot-tastic week. Take care.